Okay, OOPSLA podcast series, and I have on the line Dr. Kristof Klockner from IBM's new cloud division. So, Dr. Klockner.
Thank you very much, Max. It's indeed a pleasure to talk to you today about cloud computing. IBM, as many of you may have observed, starts taking something seriously when they form a new organization to address it. We formed an organization to focus on cloud computing across IBM's lines of business at the beginning of this year. Of course, we had started working on cloud computing and technologies leading up to cloud computing much earlier. And I joined this organization from Software Group, where I was the Chief Technology Officer for the past 2 years, to help set the technical direction for cloud computing within IBM. And therefore, it's a special pleasure for me to talk to a technical conference about what cloud computing means for IBM, and we feel means for the industry and for IT delivery at large.
Excellent. So thank you for this introduction. So Dr. Klockner is the Vice President of Cloud Computing Platform. So in general, do you see this cloud computing for IT, is it revolutionary or just an evolution, in your opinion?
Well, that's always a tricky question, but we feel that cloud computing is first and foremost an emerging paradigm for delivering and consuming IT-based services, which to me means it's both a combination of enabling technologies as well as emerging new business models. And this combination, we believe, will have substantive impact on the economics of IT delivery. And if these economics turn out to be attractive enough in a sustainable fashion, they will certainly set changes in motion that in the end may turn out to be revolutionary. Now, cloud computing hasn't just, come to us out of the blue, so to speak, but it's based on technologies that we, the IT community, have been working on for the past 20 years. So there's virtualization to drive up utilization of physical resources. There's automation, service automation, to make service management and delivery processes more efficient and more consistent, take out much of the operational expense. And there's also standardization and standardization not just of interfaces and architectural structures, but actually standardization of the services that are being delivered. So that's the evolutionary part. The way in which it's being put together to deliver a new IT consumption experience is, I think, potentially game-changing. In that, when you look at cloud computing, what does it actually mean beyond these three technologies, standardization, virtualization, and automation? Well, first of all, we believe that self-service access to resources is critical and a distinguishing characteristic. Flexibility of sourcing is a distinguishing characteristic, and the leveraging of economies of scale is important. So let me take you through all three of them briefly. When you look at self-service, there have been many technology shifts where self-service actually has driven adoption, and in the course of that has changed the way business is being conducted, has changed business processes and delivery systems. Just think of the impact, ultimately revolutionary impact, that the introduction of ATMs has had on personal banking, or to take self-service one step further, the introduction of online banking has had on personal banking. So self-service, on the one hand, gives the user immediate access. On the other hand, it gives the user usually immediate access through a service catalog, a catalog of services, a restricted set of services. So that is an opportunity for the service provider to kind of balance a more streamlined portfolio of services with immediate benefit for the users, which drives organizational acceptance. So when you look at, for instance, access to IT resources for development or test, self-service through a provisioning interface to a test cloud can greatly drive down the overhead, can facilitate reuse, can take a lot of the tedium out of the actual creative work, and thus streamline, and thus, in this particular instance, greatly facilitate agile development. So that's self-service, flexible sourcing. What we find very much in the clients that we talk to, they want to move from exclusively building and owning IT assets to sourcing IT solutions. And they have a very mature approach, most of them, to that. They realize that there are certain services, certain applications that will stay in-house. There are others that they may want to take from external providers. So if you take the cloud here, it's important to understand that most clients that we deal with want a mix between private clouds that either they own themselves or that somebody runs for them in a dedicated fashion behind their firewall, and public clouds and combinations thereof. Perhaps having a private cloud for your average workload, but having the ability to burst into a public cloud for exceptional volumes, exceptional workloads, or workloads that are only used temporarily. And lastly, economy of scale. That also goes hand to hand with standardization. So can you streamline services in such a way that they can make use of an infrastructure in a fairly uniform manner, and can you aggregate enough workload from various sources so that you have a smoothing out of peaks and troughs of the various workload types. So self-service, flexible sourcing, and economies of scale enabled through what we call a dynamic infrastructure, namely, in particular, virtualization and service management. And fortunately, the technology that we've collectively worked on in the past decades has matured sufficiently to now give us commercially viable solutions in this space. So I believe the economics are very compelling, and they are going to create an incentive to look at application structures, to look at standardized delivery modes, and that in turn will have